Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to today's program, Foolproof Gen AI for New York Lawyers, integrating Gen AI for a smarter, more efficient practice. This program is sponsored by the Committee on Technology and the Legal Profession, the Committee on Law Practice Management, and the Committee on Continuing Legal Education of the New York State Bar Association. Today's program runs from 1 p.m. to 3:05 p.m. Please note you must remain on the line for the duration of the program to receive credit for your participation. Participants are welcome to post questions using the Q&A tab in the Zoom portal. As a reminder, please do not ask for the MCLE code in the chat or share the code in the chat. Doing so could result in the program losing its accreditation. At the conclusion of today's program, please be sure to return to your My Learning dashboard, enter in the verification codes to receive your CLE certificate. A PDF of the verification form and course materials are also available in your Learning dashboard. After the program, if you could also please take a moment to fill out the course evaluation. Your feedback is important and valuable to us for future programming. That's the time I'd like to hand it over to one of our speakers for today, Dr. Gleb Tupersky. Dr. Gleb Tupersky was named Officer Whisperer by the New York Times for helping leaders overcome frustrations with hybrid work and generative AI. He serves as the CEO of a boutique future of work consultancy, Disaster Avoidance Experts. He is a best-selling author, and Dr. Tupersky also has cutting-edge thought leadership, was featured in over 650 articles he published and over 550 interviews he gave to popular venues. Dr. Tupersky's expertise comes from over 20 years of consulting, coaching, speaking, and training for innovative startups, major nonprofits, and Fortune 500 companies. You can read his full bio in the materials, and I will hand it over to Dr. Gleb Tupersky.
Thank you very much, Tara. Really appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. So let's talk about how you can outthink the machine and outpace the future. We'll talk about generative AI adoption. That's the goal of today's presentation. So here's what you can anticipate. Now, for logistics, just so you know the logistics, I should mention this. If you are watching this as a recording and you want to get a copy of my book and other resources after the presentation, you should go to the link in the URL that you see below me, tinyurl.com/DAE event. So again, tinyurl.com/DAE event to get a copy of my book. Not selling my book, it's a free copy of my book for those who are attending and those who are watching the recording. So just go there, put in your information, and you'll get a copy of my book and other resources like the slides and so on from the presentation. I also put it into the chat. That's going to be a link to the chat. Okay, now that out of the way, I will be using a more novel technology than PowerPoint to present. It's called Prezi Video. So you should see me and the slides on the screen right next to me. If you don't see me clearly, if you don't see the slides clearly, then you're not on full view. So just click on the top right and click on full view of the speaker, and you should be able to see the slides clearly as a result. Okay, now going on. You should be able to see the slides changing right now. And I'll talk about the objectives on the agenda of the presentation. First, we'll demystify what the role of generative AI is in modern legal practice. It has been evolving quite quickly since the release of ChatGPT in November 2022, and it's really quite impactful. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about addressing risks. Many folks, so I've worked with a number of law firms on integrating generative AI. The first thing people ask me about is ethics and fabricated citations, misleading outputs. That's been in the news. We'll talk about that. Then we'll talk about how you can use prompting strategies for effective, successful AI utilization in your law firm. We'll talk about some ethical guidelines and practical integration steps, how do you actually integrate it into your work. And we'll talk about benefits, limitations, and future AI innovations so that you can know what's coming up in the next couple of years. All right, so that's the shape of the presentation. That's what you can anticipate. And Alex, as he mentioned, will be jumping in occasionally to comment on it. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits of generative AI based on what I've worked with, companies I've worked with. It cuts a lot of research time. Probably the most effective and the easiest, lowest hanging fruit is retrieving case law swiftly. So through things like Westview and Thomas Reuters and so on, they have integrated generative AI tools, and if you choose to use them, some people don't, but if you know how to use them, they will let you get case law quite quickly. Then summarizing
Actually,
vast
Gleb, I'm going to have to jump in right there.
Yeah.
I have spent the last year or more really testing AI for basically every kind of use a litigation firm could can think of for it. I primarily do commercial and real estate litigation, so at least in those fields, I can't tell
Yep.
you about, family law, but for research purposes, AI has been absolute garbage.
Mhm.
I can use it to draft very eloquent things if I give it the facts and if I give it the research. But even the companies that specifically are all about the legal research, like West and Lexis, their AI products have been so unimpressive, it's not even funny. They keep begging me to demo them. Oh, we'll show you how good it got. And I have a few standard research questions I ask AI because I know exactly what the answers are and what I would expect to see if one of my associates was tasked with researching it.
Yep.
So, I have a test case on the demutualization of MLMIC. And it discusses, who gets the dividend payouts and who gets the demutualization payouts. And it's a recent set of cases that went up to the New York Court of Appeals. We got high-level decision that made it black letter law. To this day, even though it's now been, I think, a couple of years, the Westlaw and Lexis systems do not find that top case. And instead, they both come back to me with competing decisions from between our various appellate departments. And they say that it depends on which part of the state you're in. It's inconclusive law. Here's some cases to help guide your argument. And they seem to not grasp that that's now been decided. And I have a few test cases like that I use. And so far, for research purposes, the definitive current case law still eludes the AI at least 30% of the time. And 70% may be better than nothing as far as good research. Certainly I agree that you should run it to supplement the research you do otherwise and to cross-check it in case you missed something and it finds that great case. But I would not consider it the low-hanging fruit that, this is the thing you should implement and it'll make your practice substantially more efficient. It's the one where if you rely on what it says, may God have mercy on your soul and may the grievance committee have mercy on your license. But that's my
fair enough. Yeah, what I've seen, so I've worked with a number of law firms integrating it, and it doesn't, so we'll talk about the nuance, so I was going to talk about it later, but I'm happy to talk about it now. It doesn't capture newer case law well. It captures older case law quite well. And so that's kind of definitely one important nuance. And of course, you need to review it and check it and cross-reference things. Where it's really helpful is cutting down on the research time. It's not helpful so much on like making sure that you get the exact correct case, but it helps cut down a lot of research time by pulling cases, especially for areas where you don't have too much familiarity.
I wouldn't disagree with that. It certainly will give you a starting point, and then from there, it's still very important. The caution here is have the AI help you as much as you want, just like have that unpaid law student intern help as much as you want. They might be brilliant. They might find you the case that makes your career, and you will be forever thankful. But if you don't check their work and you sign your name to it, may they have mercy on your license.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah, and we'll talk about that and how you really want to check it. But it's where AI is very useful is, as you talk about it, treating it as many copies of unpaid legal paralegal support, essentially, that you don't super rely on it, but it will save you a lot of time.
Indeed.
And it
In
will.
fact, your second point, the swiftly summarizes vast documents, that is where I find that it is actually, that's like the lowest hanging fruit. That's the one that most lawyers are most impressed with right away of here's 300 disorganized pages from the potential client. Do we want to take on this case? Well, you're going to want to review in detail later, but if you drop that into any number of AI products, you'll at least have a very good gist of what the case is about. You'll have a decent chronology. You'll have a sense of who the parties are and who's aggrieved by who. And with that, armed with that information in 15 seconds, it's so much easier to walk into a client meeting and discuss the deeper elements of the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And so what I tend to find is that, again, I'm listing some things that folks have found helpful, and we could talk about which ones are most helpful or not. but those are lower hanging fruits that I found if you treat it well. And legal research, like I said, and I agree with what you're saying in terms of the most recent cases, it's not going to be as helpful. Awesome. Then automating routine legal analysis. So looking at basic routine legal analysis, that is quite helpful to boost legal productivity, do less work yourself, not only summarizing client stuff, but writing initial drafts and so on. Providing data-driven insights, doing a lot of research and providing some insights on what is going on with your clients, what is going on in external research. So it's going to be quite helpful there. And helping you focus on more complex issues with doing fast research. So those are areas where I found it quite helpful and my clients find it helpful. Drafting documents, so to what Alex was talking about. Help you have robust initial drafts for strong document bases. Helping you summarize legal text quickly and clearly. And again, this is all stuff that you need to check afterwards. We'll talk about that, but this is kind of where you get benefits from it. Automating standard forms, filling out standard forms, quite helpful with that. Helps you have document production process. It minimizes errors caused by human oversight. Some people make some errors. People aren't perfect, right? And if you have both people and generative AI checking work done by people, then you'll spot some errors that you wouldn't spot otherwise. And then cross-checking citations. So again, you should not rely solely on generative AI, but it can help you with cross-checking citations that you can then see if you caught some errors. You should not simply trust it because it can be a problem with generating some fake cases if you don't use the tools that are specifically within legal, like Westview and so on, that are within legal firms, the what's called retrieval augmented generation, where it's specifically trained on a corpus of legal texts. If you just use ChatGPT or something like that, that's not specifically trained on the corpus of legal texts, it might make up some fake citations, which you don't want. Cost savings. Enhances efficiency, so much quicker work. Lowers overall costs and increases, therefore, ROI for you and your clients. It helps you focus on high-level strategic legal work and more innovation. Provides competitive edge through adopting legal technology, which is talking about the technology, right? And helps you optimize resource allocation, so help you be more data-driven, more productive. Let's talk about the limits. So Alex talked about some limits earlier. So let's talk about what they are more broadly. So generative AI as a tool uses deep learning to predict the most statistically probable text. And so if it's not trained specifically on the text that you want, sometimes the text that it will predict will not be correct. So even legal specific AI may sometimes fabricate data. So again, that's why you want to make sure to cross-check it and verify things. So that's where you want to do careful review. If it's legal specific, if it's trained on the text, the usual kind of problems will not be fake citations, but as Alex was talking about, they might not be the most relevant citations, not the most topical citations to the situation. That, of course, risks presenting critical details, and so you want to have continuous verification of what the product is. Now, I'm sure you heard about the New York attorneys who were fined for submitting AI fake cases that were fined for $1,000 for including 6 fictitious case citations. They used ChatGPT to generate a legal brief with invented authorities. You don't want to do that. That's why it's very important to check these things. Failed to verify research. So that was a big problem. That shows the need for diligent review of AI output. Texas lawyer was also sanctioned, not only New York. The lawyer fined $2,000 for AI-generated legal filings. And of course, the $5,000, $2,000, that hurts, but much more damaging is your standing and your reputation. Even as Alex was talking about the grievance committee, right? The filings contained non-existent cases, inaccurate quotations. Court found failure to verify AI research. Big problem. So that required remedial training on ethical AI usage. So this is where you have some risks from unverified AI output. And so you need to know how to address these risks. That risks legal malpractice and credibility loss, undermines trust, wastes court resources, that can lead to prolonged litigation, losing, of course, some things, increasing legal costs, and disciplinary actions, fines, sanctions, suspensions, not good. Now, let's talk about the broader ethical framework. So I'll talk first about the ABA ethical framework, the American Bar Association, then the New York State Bar Association framework. So first, we'll talk about the ABA. The ABA Formal Opinion 512 is the most relevant one. That was July 2024. First formal guidance on usage of generative AI in legal practice. You need to follow, of course, part of the opinion was following the ABA model rules of professional conduct. So considering ethical obligations to ensure generative AI tools are used responsibly, upholding integrity. This applies in all cases of ethical behavior by lawyers, regardless of whether using generative AI tools, but the ABA is reinforcing that you need to do that regardless of whether you're using generative AI tools. Now, you need to be competent when using generative AI. Provide legal presentation with full technical knowledge, understanding the benefits and risks. So you need to know and be familiar and comfortable with using these tools if you're using them in your practice. Evaluate AI tools for suitability and reliable output, and independently verify AI tools, AI outcome research and drafting to prevent errors. This was part of the ABA guidance. Be confident, so have confidentiality, of course. Safeguard client data when entering information into AI. So what does that mean? Well, there are some models, the free models. If you're using a free model, then the information that you're using is going to be available to the model provider, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Gemini from Google, whether it's Anthropic, Claude, whatever you're using. They will use that information to train their models. So you don't want to put any confidential data into free models. You should really just pay the $20 and use the model that's going to be paid, and you will keep the information confidential. Have consent before cloud-based AI tools. So have your client consent before using client information for generative AI. Check vendor policies to ensure robust data protection. Large vendor providers, the Anthropics, the ChatGPT, the Geminis, Microsoft Copilot, those all have good data protections. But if you're using a fly-by-night operator, then you shouldn't be using those. But if you are, you need to check their data protection. Avoid AI use of secure measures, risk data exposure. That's just part of the guidance. Have transparent client communication.
Hang on, Gleb, before you go further, I do want to give a couple of practical tips as far as, you know, here are the real practical bright line rules on when you can and can't dump information into Claude or wherever it is you're going to put it without getting into trouble. The first question you've got to ask yourself is this truly confidential data? Just because I'm going to drop a chronology of everything that happened in the case into Claude or ChatGPT and ask it to draft an eloquent timeline and brief, I'm not really providing anything confidential if all that information was already previously put into pleadings, exhibits, etc. So very often the information that Claude or ChatGPT needs in order to draft the brief is not going to be anything that was confidential to begin with. Second, if you're using it for legal drafting purposes and litigation, it becomes one of those things of you might be putting in confidential information, but it's not going to be confidential for much longer. And there's no practical, realistic way that your opponent will get their hands on your chat history in the 2 weeks between when you start drafting your motion for summary judgment and give ChatGPT all the juicy details of the case, and the date when you actually take your finished product with all the exhibits that support it and file it on NICEF for the world to see. Well, the moment you do that, it's not confidential information. So if later ChatGPT is somehow able to reveal that chat to opposing counsel, to whoever, what does it matter? I mean, in practice, yeah, it's kind of like having some of your internal notes revealed. But unless you're typing things into ChatGPT, like, I really have no faith in my argument, don't believe the word my client is saying, and really think this motion is completely frivolous and I should be sanctioned for it, but go ahead and draft me one anyway. Now, if you say things like that, maybe presumably if somebody gets at your chat history, you're going to be in trouble. But realistically, unless you're discussing with ChatGPT what the settlement offer should be or something like that, something that you're under no circumstances going to be sharing with the other side, and information that needs to remain confidential for a long enough period of time, there's really no concern about that sort of confidentiality. Essentially, don't give it the information you don't intend to put into court papers, because why does it need them to draft the court papers? So that's a key factor right there in how you can use it and not have problems. And as far as even the confidential stuff of settlement settlement strategies, easy ways to mask that is to just change the names and change the subject areas in your chat and discussion, in having, let's say, ChatGPT help you analyze what an appropriate settlement offer should be. If you don't put in anything about your specific case, but generalize it, make it broad to an overall jurisdiction, you're not putting in anything confidential. And there's no way that anybody's going to data mine in any reasonable amount of time to pull that, extrapolate it, and figure out which case it belongs to and sell it to your, to your opposing party. There's some things where, yes, there's technically an issue where there may be some access to this data by a machine, or even the developers of ChatGPT or whoever, where they might see a log of this. Now, if the concern is you're going to destroy attorney-client privilege, the answer is no, because you have that reasonable expectation of privacy. It's like the example of if you're in an elevator and there's other people there and you discuss the case, well, you've just broken attorney-client privilege. But if you're in the elevator alone with your client and neither of you realizes or thinks about the fact that there's a security camera, and in theory there's a recording of the conversation somewhere, but you were the only two in the elevator and nobody else really has access to that conversation, I don't see any ethics opinion ever that will say that, no, you've breached attorney-client privilege. You have to exercise reasonable protections here for anything that's foreseeable. I can't foresee a situation, well, I can see my phone ringing and distracting me, but I can't foresee a situation where anything you put into ChatGPT or Claude would actually come back out in such a way where it would reveal sensitive information to the other side. At most, your really eloquent phrasing that works really, really well in your, opening or closing arguments that you worked so hard on the exact sentence structure of, might later be used by ChatGPT to help some teenager with his high school essay. Cool. It'll learn. Somebody else will get a new phrase in their lives. That's the kind of data that ChatGPT is going to mine and take. Phrasing, word, sentence structure, that sort of thing. It's not going to say, oh, the attorney for Microsoft plans on making a settlement offer of $30 million to, Apple. Let me notify Apple's counsel. It doesn't work like that. So within reason, don't put in anything super sensitive, super sensitive, without cloaking it in such a way where no one can really figure out what you're talking about. But beyond that, I don't see AI as this, scary thing where your client data, if you put it in there, is going to somehow blow up in your face.
Yeah, I think the difference is here between a paid model and an unpaid model. What you're talking about here is relevant to unpaid models. Whereas if it's a paid model, if you use a ChatGPT paid account or a Microsoft Copilot paid account, your data stays with you. So it's
they say that, but you know what?
Well,
they say that with a lot of other things too. And then years later, we discover that deep in the background, they were actually using the data for all sorts of things. Google is famous for doing those sorts of things. So is Apple. So
I'm talking about as a lawyer, what can you expect? You can expect that Google, you should and can expect that Google and Microsoft will adhere to their terms of contract, which they have pretty good data privacy protections for people who use paid models. If you use an unpaid model, that's where the issues are coming up. I agree, it's not a high risk at all. So, but from the ABA perspective, let me say it this way. When I come into a company and I work with a company, what I usually tend to see is that already, like a law firm, already 15 to 20% of lawyers are using some sort of 15 to 30% of lawyers already using generative AI. The maybe something like 50% of the remaining lawyers, like so there are 60, 70% left, something like 40 to 50% are open to it, but they're concerned about the ethics and they're concerned about what will happen to my data. And so here we're talking about that population. And
Right.
so to get them comfortable with it, I just tell them that, look, Microsoft, whatever you're using, ChatGPT, their contract terms say that they're not going to be using their data. Like, I don't know what happens in their backend, but as a lawyer, you should expect that they will abide by their contract terms. So just get the paid account, and then you should be safe.
Right, or at least safe from a malpractice claim.
Yes.
Or at least have somebody to point to in a lawsuit and say, the TOS said that my data was safe. I relied on those terms of service reasonably, and so go sue them. Yes, I agree with you. You should always get the paid product. And quite frankly, these paid products are cheap enough
Yep.
that it really doesn't make sense not to. I mean, ChatGPT Teams will cost you $25 per user, and it
Yep.
gives you unlimited deep research. I can open up 10 tabs and start off 10 different research projects related to 10 different cases, walk away, get lunch, come back, have 10 different, briefs or products ready to go for my review. It's lovely.
It's great. Yeah.
25 bucks a month. I mean, really, if that's not a reasonable price to pay for a tool, then, I don't know what we're measuring in. So the free account is cute, but it just has so many limitations that even if the terms of service were the same as far as the data goes, what law firm only has 10 legal questions that they want deep research per month? Maybe in the first month of you starting a law firm, but after that, hopefully you have more clients.
I mean, hopefully you have a lot of questions in the first 10 months, that
too.
All right, let's move on. Transparent client communication on AI, according to the ABA. Inform clients of AI use in legal research and drafting. So according to the ABA, you should do that. Explain how AI may impact case strategy and outcomes. Mainly, it will improve your case strategy and outcomes by limiting human errors because humans can cross-check AI, and also it will likely cost them less because you'll spend less time on it. Clearly state AI involvement and engagement letters, and advise clients on potential risks and benefits of AI tools, which you're getting right now through this conversation. All right, reasonable fees and supervision. Bill only for time spent in reviewing AI-generated work. So don't bill, obviously, as though you had not used generative AI. Disclose any fee adjustment due to AI efficiency gains. So a number of the law firms I worked with switched to, for example, flat fees for certain repeatable client work and other sorts of arrangements because they're just saving so much time using generative AI. Supervise junior staff to ensure ethical AI use. Talked about some staff who are using AI already within your firm without perhaps you knowing it. And so maintain transparency and protect client interests and trust. This is all part of the ABA guidance. All right, what about the New York State Bar Association? So an AI task force that enhances the ABA guidance. 2024 New York State Bar Association report aligns with the ethical standards, highlights the impact of AI and the need for careful oversight, reinforces duty of competence and client confidentiality, warns against legal risks and relying too heavily on AI, which we talked about some legal risks, and complements ABA with practical enforceable measures. Protect integrity with clear AI policies. So have strict security to prevent data breaches, which, by the way, that's obviously relevant to whatever you're using. You're not going to have much more exposure because you're using Microsoft Copilot than if you're using Microsoft Teams. So just have strict data. The problem in terms of data breaches that I've seen with generative AI is that they make it easier to scrape data. So your data previously was harder to find if you have a data breach, but if you have a data breach and you have generative AI tools, then it's going to be easier to find your data. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't make it harder it doesn't make it easier to breach your data, but it makes it easier to figure out what data is available, what data is valuable. So do keep that in mind in terms of data breaches. Advocate transparency in reviewing AI-generated results so that your clients know, other lawyers know within your firm what you're doing. Directly address AI risks like false legal precedents. Calls for policies to ensure reliability and accuracy in using AI, and safeguards to maintain trust between lawyers and clients, which the ABA gets at, but this talks about more safeguards, telling clients explicitly about how you're using generative AI. AI education is part of and what you're getting right now is part of the New York State Bar Association AI Task Force guidance. Widespread AI training across law firms, attorneys, paralegal, other staff need clear understanding. So not only lawyers, but paralegals really need understanding and AI usage. That reduces misuse by clarifying AI's strengths and weaknesses, that enables confident adoption of AI solutions and helps you get more benefits from generative AI. Strategically leveraging AI within ethical boundaries. So balancing innovation of this technology with ethics. Align strategies with the task force to reduce potential risks for you. To support, make sure that your ethical AI integration aligns with your existing firm values, whatever they happen to be, and proper use enhances legal services and client satisfaction, according to the task force. Okay, cool. So that's the guidance from the ABA and the NYSB on using generative AI tools. Let's talk about how to ensure competence that the New York State Bar Association and the American Bar Association both talked about. Foundational. So legal, learn basic AI functions and legal tool applications. I will be talking about some legal tools throughout this conversation, as well as broader chat tools. Understand the benefits of AI and its limitations without deep technical training. So somebody, for example, in the Q&A asked about what deep learning is about. What is actually happening with generative AI? And I can briefly go over it just so you understand what's happening. So deep learning is a process where generative AI tools take in essentially the whole information of the internet plus some additional information. So they take in that information, they're trained on that information, and they're trained to predict what is most likely to be the next comment. So based on a question or a prompt you put in, they're trained to predict what's most likely going to be the correct next answer to your question, or how to continue a paragraph, or how to make a draft. So that's the point of what generative AI does. Now, if it's also trained on some legal data, so you have a generative AI tool that's trained on the whole of the internet. So that's kind of one part of the training. Then you give it legal data. So let's say Westview or something like that. It gives you, the Westview has legal data, and it tells the generative AI tool that's already trained on all of the data of the internet. It says it to, okay, you're trained on predicting the data based on information on the internet that's widely available. Now, also, when you're responding to questions, go to the separate legal corpus of data and reference it when you're making predictions on what is most likely to be the right answer to the prompt. And so that is the specific legal tool that you're using that's trained. It's called, I think I mentioned before, RAG, Retrieval Augmented Training. And so that is based on the existing legal research. That's what makes it much more likely to be accurate. Not 100%, but much, much more likely to be accurate when you're using something like Westview. And again, not for some issues, for some, like Alex was talking about, for some more contemporary, newer laws, it will not be, newer cases, it will not be as good. But for older precedents, it will be quite good, and it will help you get a lot of baseline of research done. Use online resources to explore AI's role in legal practice. This is an online resource. I published an article for the New York State Bar Association on this topic, so it's another resource. There are a bunch of resources available for you to learn about. And recognize about how AI can streamline routine legal tasks effectively. Westview. So Ask Practical Law AI gives you, again, pretty reliable citations, but not for the newest cases necessarily. Generates responses grounded in authoritative legal sources. uses retrieval augmentation, which is what I talked about, for precise and accurate citations. So the citations will be accurate, they will not always be the most relevant. So there's a difference between what's accurate and what's relevant. Offers robust verification features to reduce errors, and it's trusted by firms for complex legal research needs. Again, the initial stages of the research, not the final stages and not the newest cases. Lexis AI is another tool. Integrates retrieval, which we talked about, with comprehensive legal databases, minimizes hallucinations. I'm not saying it's going to be 100% free of them, but it minimizes them by using verified legal sources, enhances accuracy in research and generation of citations, designed for legal professionals. Bloomberg Law and Microsoft Copilot are great for drafting support. So Bloomberg Law AI streamlines drafting of legal documents. Microsoft Copilot is great in editing and formatting tasks. By the way, I'm talking about Microsoft Copilot because I know a number of legal firms already use Microsoft. ChatGPT is a great tool to use here. Anthropic Claude is also a great tool to use here. So all of those will work well. Boosts efficiency while ensuring legal compliance. So again, because when you use a paid product where the data stays with you, and supports high quality work with necessary human oversight. ChatGPT. So let's talk about that. There's some caution there. It's assistant brainstorming and initial idea generation, quite helpful. Preliminary versions of documents must be rigorously verified because, again, we had some cases where ChatGPT generated inaccurate citations. So you can create a ChatGPT tool. So Alex was talking about deep research. Deep research is a quite good tool. So again, it might create some inaccurate generate citations, which is why you need to check it much more. But it will provide a much more comprehensive document output than something like Westview. It should be a supportive, not the sole resource. It's arguably the smartest available model when you use the legal function. So, okay, the newest one, this was after it was released after I prepared the presentation. O3 is the O3 version. So you should be using not the O1, but the O3 version, or paid version. Now, protecting client confidentiality. So we talked a little bit about this before. Evaluate potential risks before entering client data. And we talked about some examples already. Consider exposure threats from cloud-based systems. Analyze the security features before entering data. Use risk assessments to guide how safe data handling is. So again, thinking about tools, like Alex said, if you think that motion is frivolous, you should not be doing the motion, but if you are, you shouldn't be writing it down anywhere. You shouldn't be writing it down in your email. You shouldn't be writing it down in any area because you can always be hit with a data breach and that can leak out. You definitely don't want that hanging over you with someone demanding 100 Bitcoins or whatever it is, though, if you don't want that data leaked. And generative AI makes it easier for people to get such information. So it doesn't make it easier for them to break in, but it makes it easier to find such information. Use tools to avoid using your client data for training. Just use a paid tool that keeps the data on your server. Enterprise level tools like Microsoft Copilot, paid version of ChatGPT, paid version of Anthropic. Those tools, paid version of Google, so Gemini, if you're a Google firm. So whatever you're using, there's paid versions that basically protect you from this problem. And specialized legal tools like Westview obviously will help with that too. Reviewing data policies by vendors. Look at vendor policies for robust data safeguards. And again, if other legal firms are widely using them, it's quite good, but I'm sure you already read the data policies. Confirm that they protect client confidentiality, ensure policies limit data sharing and unauthorized access, and require strict privacy terms in service agreements. So again, most already do that, but here we're talking about if you're using a novel service, if somebody pitches you a novel legal service and they're saying, use our thing, then you really should be looking at these things and checking on vendors' confidentiality and so on. Upholding confidentiality as an ethical pillar. Prioritize client confidentiality. Adhere to ethical standards, legal professional rules, guidance by the ABA and the NYSBA. Routinely review AI output for data security compliance and maintain confidentiality to preserve public trust, and especially client trust. Okay, so that's confidentiality. Let's talk about client AI integration and talking to clients about integrating AI. Tell your clients that AI aids in drafting legal documents and your research. So be transparent about this stuff. Explain how AI plays a vital role in streamlining legal processes. And again, this is both the ABA guidance and the NYSBA guidance talks about this as a really important issue, communicating and making it clear to clients about how you're using generative AI. Emphasize that it improves efficiency without replacing legal judgment, that you review everything, you put your name on it, and that it actually helps you reduce errors by reducing human error because AI can catch human errors and humans can catch AI errors, it actually reduces error. So it makes it better for your client. Clients clarify that all AI generated output are thoroughly reviewed by experts, by you, by lawyers. Building client trust. Address client concerns promptly to align expectations with reality. Some of your clients will not be nearly as savvy about AI as you are. So you need to teach your clients about generative AI usage. Some law firms that I work with, when they work with another firm, corporation that doesn't, or often even a government entity, or more often a government entity that doesn't use generative AI, they have difficulty persuading the organization that they're working with that, hey, we're going to be using AI, it's all right. And so this is something that you need to train and educate your clients on to make some clients feel comfortable with, because some clients will not be. And you need to give them that option, of course, that if the client doesn't want, you will not be using generative AI, but it will cost your client more money and it might cause more errors because AI will not be catching some of the errors that are inevitable. Some errors are just not catchable by humans easily. Ensure dialogue that promotes clarity, trust, and collaborative solutions. So maybe you can negotiate with your client on, well, we could do this with generative AI, but we won't do that. Whatever it might be, whatever your clients might be comfortable with. Actively promote openness to build credibility and public confidence with your clients. So public, not meaning broader public, but with your client. Engagement letters. Include clear and detailed AI usage disclosures in your engagement letters with clients that will start the conversation going. Talk about key benefits like faster draft generation, enhanced research speed, and so on. Explain risks like AI hallucination, data inaccuracies, and how you will address those risks, like that the final legal work is reviewed by a licensed attorney and that will catch any risks, that the humans will catch some AI risks. Ensure clients understand potential fee changes from AI efficiencies. That's the biggest selling point, that it's cheaper for your client for you to use generative AI, much, much better.
I'm so
Offering
sorry.
AI discounts.
I'm so
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. May we pull up the verification code slide for the first code?
Sure.
Thank you. The first MCLE verification code is the letter F. F as in Frank. Again, the first MCLE verification code is F. F as in Frank. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem.
You're all set now. You can continue. Thank you.
Okay, great. So let's talk about offering discounts. That's something that the law firms I work with for AI-powered document drafting tasks. So that is something to think about, offering discounts for clients. Like you can share in the benefits. Use AI cost savings to lower client billing and enhance overall value. You'll basically be able to quote lower fees. So you'll be more competitive compared to other law firms that are not using generative AI as effectively and therefore can't offer the fees that you're offering. Now, not the actual fees in terms of charging cheaper rates, but you can actually spend less hours on doing a task. And you can consider charging a higher rate, but spending less hours. So you're not charging, you're charging for something that's, you're a better lawyer essentially because you're able to get the client better service through using generative AI. The client overall wins because they spend less money, and you win because you spend less time, but you earn more money for the time that you're spending. And you can outcompete other law firms that are essentially spending, not using generative AI effectively, and they are overall charging the client more money because they're spending more time. Present AI efficiency as a compelling value add in client engagements. Show clearly how AI-driven work is faster and cuts down on overall legal fees. Highlight tangible client ROI benefits. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. So we talked about benefits to clients. Let's talk about how to use generative AI. Prompting techniques. Use iterative prompting for enhanced effectiveness. What does that mean? Typically, when lawyers start using generative AI, they treat it as essentially a Google search. So they ask a question or they ask for one thing or to draft something. That's not the best way to use generative AI. You need to look at, okay, you ask it to draft a document, let's say. Then, once it drafts the document, there are some things about it that you like, there's some things you don't like. Typically, when lawyers start using generative AI, what they do is they copy paste a document and then they work with it themselves. So they're like, okay, I don't like this, I like that, I'm going to edit it out. That's not the best way to use generative AI. What you need to do is ask generative AI to change it based on your feedback. You'd say, okay, I'm looking at this document. These are the parts of the document that I like. These are the parts of the document that I don't. Regenerate the document. That's the iterative prompting. And that's an example of iterative prompting. Or let's say the research. So Alex mentioned deep research. Perhaps the first research report, it takes about 20 to 30 minutes for it to come up with a research report. Go to lunch, you come back, and there's some things about the report that you like, but there's some things about the report that you don't. And you could say, okay, redo the report using this information. And you can just let it go and come back in another 30 minutes while you take care of some emails or something like that, and then it will redo the report. So it's an iterative process. You can have many, many iterations. Each individual interaction with a generative AI tool takes place in a chat. And so you can keep all your client communication about a specific client within a chat, and then keep asking questions within that chat. That's one approach. You can also create a project dedicated to a client case, and then that part of that project, you can have many chats, but they would all be part of a single project, and so they would be connected together and they would reference each other. So that's another way that you can do it. You can even create if you're using Microsoft Copilot, you can create a virtual agent, or you can create a gem in Gemini, or you can create a GPT in ChatGPT that's going to be specifically dedicated to a type of case, or to a type of document drafting process, or to a type of research process. And so you can give it specific instructions and give it examples of how you like to draft a document. And that is a more powerful use of it. But it's basically an iterative and repeating process that helps you achieve more reliable and accurate results through repeated query cycles. So repeating your questions and getting it to improve and learn over time. Because if you keep it within the same chat, within that chat, it will learn and remember what happened in the past. So each new chat is going to be separate and distinct from your previous chats. But within the same chat, if you keep a conversation within the same chat, it will remember what happened. It will remember the previous context, and it will improve its conversation engagement with you based on the previous contexts. Identify gaps and reprompt for improved clarity, like I talked about. Context-rich queries. Provide clear context within each AI prompt. The more context you can provide, the better the output. So you could build a complex query, a complex question for how to draft a document. Let's say each time you wanted to draft a document, a specific type of document, interrogatory or whatever, you can give it an example of your previous interrogatories. You can give it an example of whatever documents that you previously drafted that you like, and say, okay, here are 3 examples of a document. You can upload that document and say, using these 3 examples of previous documents, here is a prompt that I want you to use and create a new document that's going to be about a different topic, but using the format and the style of these free documents. That would provide clear context within the AI prompt and help it do a better job. That includes relevant facts and necessary background. The more context, the better the job it can do. Guide it with specific case details and objectives. So give it details and objectives, guides of what you want to accomplish. Have queries that are clear and purpose-driven. Use meta prompts to steer its broader reasoning. Set overall task direction with meta prompts. That is prompts about how the generative AI should interpret each prompt and how it should respond to it. Instruct AI on desired output format and style. So it's not simply about the content, but format and style. Combine multiple instructions in a single prompt and steer it toward coherent conclusions through a meta prompt. Construct detailed and precise prompts. Have explicit instructions and clear constraints about what you want generative AI to create. Have key terms and expected content details about the outcome that you're expecting, what you want it to look like. Use concise language to minimize ambiguity. Lawyers should be pretty good at that. Focus prompts to ensure targeted and accurate outputs. If you are precise, that will help you minimize hallucinations. Structure prompts to avoid speculative responses. You can specifically ask it to say, if it doesn't know, to indicate it doesn't know, not to generate something. Now, the generative AI as a tool is the way it's structured is it's prompted. It has several goals. It has a goal of being helpful, honest, and harmless. So that the three H's of generative AI usage: helpful, honest, and harmless. The helpful part of it often outweighs the honest part of it. This is where you get the hallucination. So when it asks you, when you ask it for a case citation, it might believe that I'm anthropomorphizing it, I'm anthropomorphizing it, but basically it might, the output, the algorithm might interpret your request in such a way that it will try to be more helpful than it is honest. So in order to address that, you need to tell it explicitly in the prompt that you want it to be honest. You're focusing on honesty. You're not focusing on helpfulness. You're not focusing on generating citations that don't exist. So make sure that you are focusing on honesty. Now, one nice thing about tools like Microsoft, like ChatGPT, is that you can give it broader instructions. So there's a setting where you can give it custom instructions on how you want it to respond in all cases. That's not about one prompt, that's about all prompts. And so there is where you can include information like you always want it to be honest, you want to give limited responses. If it's not sure, you want it to indicate it's unsure. So you can figure out yourself once you play with it what kind of responses you want it to give you. But that's a place where you can give it responses that are going to be applicable across all of its generated output to reduce risk of fabricated data or citations. Limit scope to verifiable and accurate information, factual information. Use precise language to guide its responses. Legal rhetoric in AI prompting. Once trained, lawyers are going to be good at crafting generative AI prompts. You're good at rhetoric. That's your job. And so once you're trained, once you know how to do it, you do a better job than other folks I work with. I work, let's say, with accountants. They don't do nearly as good a job at crafting prompts even once I train them because they're not as good with language, right? That's obvious. So legal rhetoric training aids in designing a rich and nuanced context. That helps you refine iterative prompt strategies. Rhetorical skills are great for this. So command of legal language boosts clarity and minimizes errors. You know how to be precise and nuanced, basically. Okay, what about legal research? So we talked about legal research a little earlier. Condenses complex case law into clear and concise summaries. Extracts key precedents from vast databases quickly. And again, you need to be nuanced. It's not going to be as good at the newest precedents. Highlights crucial decisions for fast and effective review. Now, again, you want to be careful here because generative AI has been known to hallucinate, saying that, hey, a certain case provides precedent when it doesn't actually provide the precedent that the generative AI thinks it provides. So that's certainly something for you to look at. Does the case actually provide the precedent that generative AI claims that provides the precedent? Generative AI is good at because it's trying to be helpful. It's good at sounding helpful, and it gets reinforced for being helpful, but it's not necessarily going to be accurate. So that's a danger that you want to check. When it says this case provides precedent for this, don't necessarily believe it. Double check. Automates routine tasks while upholding legal standards. So again, if you check it accurately, identifies relevant legal precedents from extensive data, and reduces case research time, enhances the initial case understanding. So that's where I found it to be especially helpful when I work with law firms, when lawyers tell me that the benefits that they get from generative AI in research is for initial understanding of a case, what's going on with the case, especially cases that they're not super familiar with. Manual verification of AI findings is critical. Use it for initial insights, then verify with trusted sources. Look it up yourself. Cross-check against Westlaw or Lexis. Validate every reference to ensure factual and legal accuracy. Confirm rigor the outputs from manual review methods, no question about it. Balancing efficiency with human oversight, just so you make sure that you are still overseeing it. Blend AI speed through with thorough expert verification. Use AI for this preliminary research, rely on human judgment for more specific, clear details, and figure out a workflow that works for your firm while ensuring accountability and accuracy. So for example, you can make sure that you have a paralegal looking at some case precedent and so on that the generative AI finds. It's a nice thing to do because you don't have to rely on more high-value talent. Achieve cost savings while maintaining rigorous legal scrutiny. So of course, the lawyer still should verify it, but now that you can have a paralegal check on the precedent, you could see, does the case actually support the precedent that AI claims it supports? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. An example. So a lawyer inputs query on negligence cases. AI will summarize key case law into concise points and generate a list of leading personal injury precedents. Then an overview aids initial research planning. So you can plan that and say, okay, here, let me look at those cases. How do you verify AI-generated summaries? So you cross-check AI outputs, confirm citations that match published legal opinions, identify and discard any hallucinated cases. That manual review ensures factual accuracy. So we're talking about processes that you want to install. Again, when I talk about lawyer, you can also use paralegals. Doesn't have to be a lawyer, you can use junior lawyers, whatever the structure at your firm is. What I tend to find is when I work first with a law firm, they will first use lawyers, and then they will switch to paralegals. But earlier in the stages, you can have lawyers. Integrating AI findings into your strategy. So verified cases form the basis of your legal arguments. AI drafts briefs using precise and accurate citations. That's, again, once you already verify that the citations are accurate, that's the next step here, is drafting. AI data refines case strategy and the narrative, enhances persuasiveness in legal submissions. That's actually a quite nice tool for enhancing persuasiveness. This is underutilized aspect of generative AI is you can ask it to actually be more persuasive and tell it what you're targeting. Are you targeting the judge? Are you targeting the jury? What is the goal of your specific legal motion? And that will help it if it knows the audience, especially if you tell it, if you look at the jury, you select the jury, right? And you tell it, okay, here are the demographics of the people in the jury. How would my points come across to people in these demographics? And then it will help you customize your specific argumentation to the people in the expected demographics of the jury. Great. Final review and documentation. Conduct thorough final review of all research and confirm every reference is valid and reliable. Of course, you need to do that. File documented research for court records and balancing speed gains with careful human oversight. That's an example of how you would go through the process of actually, and the kind of process that you want to institute in your firm. So that's the research. What about drafting legal documents? Using AI tools to generate initial drafts, that's actually very helpful. You give some prompts, some bullet points, some examples of previous drafts you generated, and then use that to generate drafts. Accelerates documents by producing very quick draft versions. Build on AI-generated content to streamline drafting tasks yourself through this iterative process of asking you to improve the draft in whatever ways you think it should be improved. Editing and fact-checking AI drafts. Review each AI draft for factual and legal accuracy, of course. Manually verify all citations and details in generated texts. And again, you will give it some text, some details to generate from, but sometimes stuff might still slip in there that's inaccurate. And it might not fully translate the case information, the citations you gave it, into the final draft. So make sure that you still check the final draft, even though you gave it some citations. Instead, use these citations. Edit drafts meet strict compliance with legal standards. Blend speed with expert editing. This is the nice thing. AI is very quick and it doesn't get tired. It's like Alex said, you can open 10 queries and go get lunch while it does 10 separate things. That's great. Combine drafting with expert editing skills. So you come back from lunch and you look at the drafts. Balance fast document creation with meticulous human oversight. And again, you can also get somebody else, like a paralegal, to do the fact checking. You can have them compare, okay, so you get the initial AI draft and you can have a paralegal take a look at it, say, does the citations that I gave it, does that match what it produced? And they'll say yes or no. And then you won't have to do that part. So you can only do the more complex stuff that would say, okay, this is a convincing argument, this is not a convincing argument, given what the precedents are and who I'm communicating to. Enhance overall quality by integrating AI output with your legal judgment. That frees your time for high-value strategic edits. Okay, let's talk about an example. Initiating the AI draft. Use tools like Paige, ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot. I talked about Anthropic, Claude. That's a great tool. Google Gemini. That's a great tool. I haven't used xAI's Grok, so I don't know about it, but I hear it's pretty good too. But the 4 tools that I mentioned, I've used, and law firms I've worked with used. Oh, no law firms I worked with used xAI's Grok. But those 4 tools, they are great. You want to use the paid versions. Absolutely. Make sure it can search online for whatever cases that you wanted to use. Input comprehensive instructions. Sometimes you want to give it an example of previous documents, like I mentioned. That's actually quite useful. You can upload them and then say, refer to these documents, give format, have that long of prompt that I talked about. Specify the jurisdiction, the facts, the relevant law, and desired tone that you want to pull it out. Use clear, detailed prompts to generate that initial draft outline. And again, you can have the iterative prompted after the case. Request that generative AI produces a structured document format following legal drafting conventions. You can, again, reprompt it and say, okay, you didn't quite do it the right way here, change it in this way. So within ChatGPT, for example, you can use tools like Canvas, where you can essentially open the document and put it and indicate a section of the document that you want to change. Or you can just have it change the whole document, regenerate the whole document if you want there's a different tone or something, or if you just want to see what a different style will look like. Use that as a starting point for your own edit. Reviewing and verifying. Crosscheck AI generates citations with trusted legal databases, as we talked about, Westfio, Law, and Lexis. Manually verify all factual details. You don't have to necessarily do it, you can get a paralegal to do that. Ask AI tools to identify any hallucinated or inaccurate content within the draft. Use a new chat. So here's a nice tool that you can do. When you want to check, you can use an AI tool to check your previous content generation. And here, what you'll want to do is use a new chat, because that will wipe away the previous existing context. And so you put your document into this new chat and you say, check on this and see, verify this, give me links to it. So you can use a tool different than the other one used to create a first version. So for example, what you can do is you can pay for 2 tools. I pay for 2 tools. I pay for Gemini and ChatGPT myself within my own consulting company, because something that I like to do is go from one tool and have it verify the content of another tool. And that sometimes catches issues. And a number of law firms I work with do the same sort of thing, that they have 2 tools that they use. Document discrepancies can be refined through future AI prompt strategies. So that means that you can see, okay, here is, I can see that it didn't create quite the document I wanted. Let me go and change the prompt that I used to create the document. And so that way, over time, your prompting strategy will get better and better because you will learn more and more about how to use generative AI more effectively. Refining and customizing the draft. How did the draft incorporate verified data and tailor language to the case specifics if there's something that generative AI missed, and sometimes it will certainly miss things that you'll need to put it in. Use iterative prompting. So we talked about the iterative prompting strategy where you repeat and address the using different prompts. You can change only sections of the document that are generated by using Canvas, for example, in ChatGPT, or you can change the whole document. Replace any erroneous citations, as we talked about, enhance the overall narrative using your legal judgment, and make some style adjustments that you think would be effective. Final review and integration. Conduct a rigorous final review of the complete document for more consistency and accuracy. Integrate expert editing with AI-generated content. The expert editing by you as a lawyer, and again, you can get paralegals to do the fact-checking, which they're definitely capable of doing that. Use generative AI to do so, then a final check of the integrated document. I talked about using a different generative AI. Within the same tool, you can use a different chat, or you can even use a different tool to check the output of the first generative AI tool. And something I do sometimes is use the same prompt within two different tools. I run it within ChatGPT and I run it within Gemini. And I see which one is better for specific types of documentation, for specific types of output that I want. And then I use that tool for more purposes. Confirm the final draft meets all professional legal client standards and client needs, and then finalize and file the polished document. That's the process. All right. What about client
I want to
communication?
jump in with one thing.
Yeah, please.
There's one thing I don't think you mentioned in the beginning that I have found extremely useful and helpful at getting a first draft that's much higher quality. And that is, I kid you not, telling the AI to put its lawyer hat on. Literally, the first sentence in most of my prompts is something to the effect of, you are the most eloquent and qualified legal drafter in commercial litigation in New York State and are highly proficient in all case law and statutes that exist on the topic, period. That, for reasons passing understanding, makes it think that it should give me a higher quality answer. Now, in reality, we both know why it does that. And that is because essentially telling it what it is creates the parameters of how it works. So, for example, if I ask ChatGPT or Claude to write me a blog post, excuse me, by default, it's going to write me something reasonably eloquent, using, in fact, very eloquent, but using language that's accessible to the average blog reader. Now, that doesn't mean that's the highest level of language it could do. I can say in the beginning that this blog is directed at professors of English literature, focusing on, A, B, and C, write in such a way that will be language that's most comfortable for them. And now suddenly this thing will sound a lot more intellectual and be harder to read, but will also, sound fancy. So in reality, if I tell it that it's a poet, it will write good poetry. If I tell it that it's a doctor, it will do good medical research. But if I tell it, you're the best lawyer in New York, now tell me about ulcers, it's going to tell you, it's going to gear it much more from a lawyer's perspective. Ulcers generally occur naturally, and it's unlikely that we'd be able to sue anybody if you got one. And that would be the conversation versus how do I treat one and so on. So literally the first thing you should do before asking it to draft anything, and in every chat that you start, the first thing you do is define its role. And define its role as precisely as you can. You are a litigation drafter in New York who focuses on real estate litigation, specifically as to adverse possession of vacant land in upstate New York. You know everything about every case and every statute that exists on point, as well as the common practices in the fourth department. Based on all of your advanced training, knowledge, and years of experience, I need your help with the following. And then you put in everything that you just said, and the result will be substantially better.
Yep, excellent insight, Alex. Yes, so that's part of the longer prompt that I talked about, and I think that's kind of an example of a specific way of using a longer prompt where you tell the ChatGPT tool, whatever generative AI tool that you're using, whatever it might be, that it is this. Thank you, Alex. That's quite helpful. I thought, given what Alex was talking about, I'll share an example of a prompt for writing an article, which is something I do pretty frequently. So, this kind of phrasing, take a deep breath and go through this prompt step by step, has been shown to actually improve the outcome for just general outcome because it causes it to slow down and actually think through the prompt more effectively. So your role, so the best, most brilliant article writer in the world, it's not as specific as Alex was talking about, but if I was trying to make it more specific, then I would make it more specific. And I think what Alex was talking about is a great example. So your tasks, you talk about the tasks, then you talk about my role. Who am I? My name, what is the goal? So generate an article on my behalf. Then talk about the style. Strong persuasive language, informal language, avoid repetition. You must avoid qualifiers, must be direct, otherwise it has too many qualifiers, but kind of again, you can describe your style and what you want it to do. Generate unique content, definitely important, otherwise Google will penalize you. Make sure the article grabs people's attention, appeal to readers, avoid bullet points, otherwise it has too many bullet points. Convey energy, avoid construction and style, use free subheadings, talk about the length and so on.
Glub, stupid
so-
question, because I'll be
Yeah.
honest, I did not look at what got uploaded into the course materials, but that Word file with those specific prompt instructions, any chance you can copy paste it into the chat for everybody if it's not already shared?
I'll share it with those who want my resources after the presentation.
Okay, good, because I was gonna say that looks like something that a lot of lawyers who've never tried AI could literally copy paste, change a couple of words around and try it out. If for nothing else, then blog posts for their website if they don't feel comfortable with having it, do any legal research yet. I find that the best way to get people to dab their toes in the waters of AI is to give them a few prompts to start with for benign stuff of like, here, it can draft you a holiday card, and then from there, as they go, wow, it came up with such great, subject lines for the holiday card. Let's see what it could do for a blog post. Let's see what it could do for this, that, and the other thing. And that's how we're going to get a lot better AI adoption.
That's a very fair point. Yeah, I'll definitely include that prompt and some other prompts that might be helpful as part of the resources I send to folks who want it. And again, if you're doing this, if you're watching this after the presentation, that's going to be, my resources are going to be at tinyurl.com/DAE event, and I'll put it into the chat also. Okay, let's go on talking about some
It's already
more.
in there. Oh, now it's in there twice. All right, no worries.
Yep. Put it in there for folks who might have come late, because come late, you don't get an early chat. Cool. Let's talk about some uses of generative AI that's actually quite aligned with what Alex is talking about, that are actually not for purely legal purposes, but for client communication. Client emails and memos. This is a much more innocuous, not really as much applying the ethical standards of the profession. For client emails and memos, many lawyers find that this is an easier lift early onward to use. Client emails and memos, of course, for marketing, that's another thing that you can do, but client emails and memos generate well-structured drafts with precise legal language for clients. Enhance communication speed with automated drafting tools. So there are tools, you can have a couple of prompts, You can just have some bullet points of an email that you want to send to a client and the style you want to use it, especially if you have previous examples of such emails, and you can have your generative AI tool draft that. It reduces preparation time while ensuring clarity. Ensuring independent judgment in communication. Of course, you want to review AI-generated drafts for accuracy. Especially embarrassing is that sometimes, you've probably seen viral media posts that say at the bottom of a draft that looks very nice that says, do you want to make this tone more professional, or do you want to tone it down, make it more casual or something like that? You want to make sure that doesn't appear in the draft. Edit drafts to reflect your independent legal analysis, of course. Infuse personalized insights into final client emails. So that's to the extent that you have some insights to share. So let's say you're sending your client a draft of you drafted something using generative AI tools. Then you can have that put that into a generative AI tool and say, hey, can you draft an email for my client informing them of this, the amended complaint that I'm sending them for them to review or something, or the memo. Confirm that every communication aligns with your client's strategy. Okay, what about AI for routine communication? For routine client updates, that's another area where you could easily use generative AI and make things quicker. Automate standard memos without sacrificing quality, and of course, you'll automate it and then you'll do some review of it. Maintain legal and ethical standards in every message that's aligned with ABA guidance and NYSBA guidance. Streamline workflow while keeping full human oversight, naturally. Enhancing client service with tech and expertise. Blend AI efficiency with deep legal expert insights from yourself. Offer personalized service enriched by AI data. So the AI saves you time, and you can focus that time on giving more personalized communication services to your clients. That's great. Using it to support, not replace your professional judgment. And it strengthened client trust for transparent and tailored updates. Basically, AI gives you more opportunities to do that because it will save you time, and your clients will be happy about it because they will get more tailored in communications and updates about what's going on. What about continuous AI education? This is an example of doing so. Regular CLE courses and AI and legal tech trends, workshops to update and refine AI skills, explore emerging AI tools through online training, and cultivate ethical AI use in your everyday practice, whether you're writing a blog or writing a holiday card. Make sure that it's ethical usage. Specialized AI workshops and seminars. Hands-on AI ethics seminars regularly. So thinking about AI ethics seminars. This, of course, deals with AI ethics as part of the conversation. But you can also have, so a lot of, it's funny, when I go to work with a client, a topic that is often more popular than actual AI usage is AI ethics. And this is even a more popular topic that more people want to come to, because I think some people who are not comfortable with AI usage, they still want to learn about AI ethics. Engage in interactive session on advanced AI tools. So talking about how do you actually use the tools yourself. This is not an interactive session right now, obviously, but you want to go to interactive sessions where you go and do some workshopping on AI tools that are going to be customized to your specific use cases and your needs. Learn practical application from industry experts and update your knowledge with specialized tech workshops. Let's say devoted to specific legal tools like Westview and so on, how to use it in the most effective manner. Building firm-wide AI, or Bloomberg Law. Building firm-wide AI competence. So make sure that your firm is getting this education. You're getting this education yourself. Make sure that you have everyone at your firm give it, including paralegals, not only lawyers, because paralegals know how to use it, then they will save you time for using generative AI. And of course, make sure they're using it ethically and you have a process for reviewing how they're using it. Engage external experts for tailored training sessions. Implement internal ethical seminars on ethics and uses based on these training sessions. And have regular training on tech trends for all staff. Generative AI is improving quite quickly. And so you want to keep up with the improvements. For example, the deep research tool that Alex was mentioning only became available less than 6 months ago. And now I'm using it very extensively, and law firms I'm working with are using it very extensively. It's a very, very helpful tool. It cuts so much time. Foster a culture of continuous learning over time. Have open dialogue on AI advancement and ethics. Encourage staff to pursue AI certification. There's definitely some certification that you can get that's quite helpful. Support ongoing education through mentorship programs. Lead by example to drive ethical AI integration in law. If you have a large enough law firm, I recommend setting up an AI usage committee, which will talk about AI ethics and AI usage. So have a committee devoted to this topic in your law firm. And let's talk about that. Developing clear firm AI usage guidelines. Write clear guidelines and acceptable AI use in your practice. Like I said, whenever I start working with a law firm, I find that 15 to 30% of people, lawyers, are already using it. Usually not paralegals, but lawyers themselves are already using it. And very often the partners at a law firm are surprised that so many junior lawyers at the law firm are using it. I'll talk about one example shortly, but that's something that's frequently the case. And you really need to get ahead of this. I'd be surprised if folks at your law firm are not using generative AI, at least some of them. Define permissible tasks and prohibited AI activities. Document policies for every legal work area. Again, this is based on ABA and NYSBA guidance. Align guidelines with ethical and legal standards. And consider an external expert so you don't recreate the wheel yourself. Don't need to write the whole thing yourself. AI work for junior attorneys. So you want to be familiar as a senior mid-level attorney, mid-career attorney with AI usage and supervise the innovations that junior attorneys are going to be doing, because they definitely are using it a bit more extensively than mid-career or senior attorneys. Establish protocols to monitor their usage of AI. Set review schedules and performance metrics. Set KPIs, key performance indicators, on how to evaluate how AI usage is impacting your law firm. Provide mentorship to ensure that they are using AI properly. And I have to say that often junior attorneys will be the ones who will be teaching mid-career and senior attorneys on how to use AI, but then the mid-career and senior attorneys will need to supervise the use of junior attorneys of AI, because the mid-career and senior attorneys are much more aware of ethical issues and potential complications. Enforce oversight to maintain high-quality legal drafts so that you don't have these issues of hallucinations and so on. Monitor third-party vendors for data security. Review vendor policies. We talked about that. And again, this is going to be especially applicable to the newer services that are springing up, not well-established ones. Require clear privacy terms, secure handling protocols, monitor vendors to make sure that there's no unauthorized data access. So if there's a breach in a vendor, you want to make sure to understand how that impacts you. Evaluate vendor performance against your firm's security standards. Structured oversight that minimizes risks. Have regular audits of AI-related processes. So your AI committee should be auditing how you're using generative AI. Often what will happen is that it will approve some generative AI usage, limited generative AI usage, a pilot, and then it will expand the AI usage over time as you grow more comfortable with, like Alex was saying. You might even start with something very simple, like only using AI in marketing, writing blog posts, writing content for your law firm, for SEO and so on, and then expand it over time. Have cross-functional teams for AI policy enforcement. That's the AI committee. Use detailed checklists to verify AI work quality. So make sure to, because the thing about AI work is that it can go wrong in ways different than human work goes wrong. It can catch some human errors, but it can make some simple errors of its own. So you need a checklist to know, okay, here are the ways that this typically goes wrong, and here is what I should be checking. And especially once you start delegating the checking to paralegals. Foster a culture of accountability and continuous improvement over time. So let's talk about a case study of working to integrate generative AI at a mid-sized firm, about 100 staff. So we did my survey template to assess firm needs. And by the way, the survey template will be part of the resources I'll send you. It's part of my book. Conducted some focus groups to gauge AI readiness. So we did a survey, and then we did some focus groups on AI readiness, identified gaps in AI knowledge and preparedness, especially among the senior folks at the firm, and set a foundation for a data-driven AI strategy. So let's talk about survey findings. What did the survey find? 75% of attorneys viewed AI as a potential productivity booster. So they were quite interested in it. They thought that it could boost productivity, but only 55% were eager to adopt AI actively in practice. So the gap was because people were concerned that 20% of the people who are in that gap were concerned about practice. 75% viewed it as potentially good, but only 55% were eager to actually adopt it. At that time, 15% currently used AI tools, overwhelmingly junior attorneys. I don't think there was no partner who was using it. I don't think there was even maybe one person in the mid-career, but overwhelmingly it was junior attorneys, not partners. Gaps existed between high interest and actual usage, obviously. 55% were eager to adopt it, 15% were actually using it. So what did the early generative AI adopters face? They struggled with fact-checking AI output. They didn't really know how to do it effectively. The fictitious citations, misrepresented case law, and this was still early on. This was in late 2023 when I was working with this law firm. State-specific queries exposed accuracy limitations. That's, again, another thing to think about, that it might get things not relevant to your state. That's obviously a problem. They also lack knowledge of how to do generative AI research and drafting well, effectively. They tried to reinvent the wheel, unfortunately. They didn't talk to each other. So one of the problems with early users was that they each used it individually. They didn't know that other people were using it. And they were kind of not really, how do I say this? They were not asking for permission. They were, if there was an issue, they would ask for forgiveness. That's the kind of the attitude of the early AI users. And they didn't talk to each other as a result because they didn't want this information to come out. That highlighted integration risks. Of course, it causes more integration risks when people are not talking to each other. There's no verification, there's no oversight. Focus group insights. So then we ran some focus. So this was information from the survey. Then we ran a focus group where we found that junior attorneys were worried about losing drafting skills. That was a concern. Senior attorneys showed skepticism on the limits of generative AI. 95%. So I said that 75% were interested in productivity training. 95% wanted ethical training. They wanted training on generative AI ethics. So even though 75% were interested in it as a productivity booster, 55% wanted to actively adopt it themselves. 95% were concerned about ethics. Huge concern. 80% desired training on practical AI integration into workflows. But again, only 55% were interested in using it themselves. The rest of the 25%, the difference between 25% of between 80 and 55%, wanted to understand how it would impact their firm. And so they demanded transparency and collaborative processes. So, data-driven strategy for integrating it into your law firm. Servers and focus groups, they share our key integration priorities. So what we want to integrate and focus on. We identified the need for robust training and clear policies, and that strategy helped bridge the gap between initial interest and actual usage. We planned with aligning with firm goals, with professional excellence, with the broader generative AI strategy. So listening to staff was key here in making sure that AI adoption was effective. We had some training and policy development. Comprehensive training on AI ethics, which was the biggest concern, and then best practices on using generative AI. Develop clear and firm-wide policies so that people feel comfortable, including people who are not so interested in using generative AI themselves, but that they felt comfortable with their colleagues using generative AI, that they're not exposed to the risk of their colleagues using generative AI improperly. We had workshops to boost AI competency, and we ensured training programs were aligned with ethical legal standards, of course. So that helped streamline workflows via collaborative data integration so that people knew what data generative AI relied on. And we fostered transparency in AI adoption so that people knew, okay, what's going to be happening, what are the stages, what are the pilots. Productivity gains, cultural shift over time. We reduced document review time by over 25% and reduced research speed by just under 45%. So that was a really great increase, of course. That really helped, especially early on in the cases. That was where the research speed really counted. Decreased client communication drafting time by about 20%, very helpful. Boosted overall productivity by over 30% on approved cases where the clients approved generative AI usage. Shifted firm culture to view AI as an innovation catalyst. Not everyone, let's be clear. It wasn't everyone. It was something like, again, there were 80% who were interested in the generative AI usage but there are definitely some people who are resistant. But overall, the brunt of the firm shifted, and that effectively promoted ethical and efficient AI adoption across the firm. Okay, so that's a specific case study. What will happen in the future? So anticipating future AI developments is difficult, but there are some things that are very, very clear that are going to happen. Emerging trends like retrieval augmented generation and agentic generative AI. Retrieval augmented generation is already here very clearly, and it will become only better. So Alex mentioned, let's say that currently the current use cases, so the newest precedents, are not being picked up very well by even the specialized law products, legal products. I'm guessing that within the next year, probably, they will be picked up quite well. So you can check in a year from now, and I'm guessing that the newest precedents will be picked up quite well because they will have programmed them to pick them up well. So that will be getting better. Agentic AI, generative AI, is going to be an even better tool because it will combine a number of functions within the same program. That will, so you want to go to, by the way, agentic generative AI is giving generative AI certain goals and tasks and having it take on the tasks. So you can give it the goal of research a case and draft an initial summary of the case precedents to give me the research report on this topic, and you can rely on it much more to give you an accurate information. So that is something that's an agent. It has certain goals, and it can do a number of tasks at once rather than one task at a time, which is what the current generative AI is limited to. You need to give it directions for one task at a time. Agentic AI is an agent that can take on a number of tasks at a time. So you want to attend legal tech conferences and follow industry publications, of course. Engage with AI research and academic studies for fresh insights if you want to really see where things are heading, and reviewing techniques and legal journals to refine your AI strategy. So you want to think about, from a firm-wide perspective, you want to know where the puck is going, not where it is right now. And so you want to plan your strategy for the future. Monitor evolving court rules on AI. Track changes in court rules for AI-generated evidence and citations. So there was, for example, some evidence. I'm giving a similar presentation in Illinois, and Illinois had specific guidelines from the Court of Appeal, I forget what the court is called, but the Supreme Court of Illinois had some guidelines on generative AI usage. So not only what the bar talks about, but what the court talks about. Monitor judicial opinions and bar guidelines on ethical AI usage. Regularly update your compliance protocols as AI rules evolve rapidly. Consult experts to interpret new rulings on AI evidence. Position your practice as a leader in AI integration. It will help you appeal to clients. It will help you make more money. Adjust firm policies as AI technology evolves and matures. Implement strategic planning on AI integration to integrate AI ethically and efficiently alike. Showcase innovative AI adoption to gain a competitive advantage with your clients. Promote continuous training to maintain leadership in integrating generative AI, and conduct external audits of your AI use if you're a large enough firm to do so. Okay, for key takeaways, AI enhances legal research drafting and productivity, no question. Strict human oversight and verification are key here. Ethical guidelines ensure that AI use aligns with ABA and NYSBA standards. Continuous training and transparent communication with clients is what will build trust. External experts are key for training and integration, so embrace future trends to secure a competitive legal advantage. That's the key takeaways. And now for additional resources, I mentioned go to tinyurl.com/DAE event. If you're watching this as a recording, so get my resources on this topic. For the MCLE verification code, both, so you have both codes as F and G. I'll send you a link to the slides. As Alex requested, I'll also send you a link to some prompts that you can use with generative AI and a copy of my best-selling book, ChatGPT for Thought Leaders and Content Creators, Unlocking the Potential of Generative AI for Innovative and Effective Content Creation. And finally, free coaching for integrating these strategies into your work. And you can also take the poll if you're not watching this as a recording, but if you're here right now, and if you want to get a copy of my resources, please go ahead and respond in the poll, and I will send those to you. So everything that I mentioned so far. I'll be happy to take any questions, and Alex, I'm sure, will have some comments as well.
Well, as far as questions go, I've been answering them as you went. So
Oh, cool.
I
So
think at this point, yeah, we've gone through 39 answered, and I see there's a couple more sitting here. Now, Alden is asking, can you repeat the name of that service? Unfortunately, that question is from 1:33 p.m. So I'm not entirely sure which
oh,
which service you were referring to at the time.
hopefully that will be, I think the recording should be provided to folks. So for you, Alden, you can take a look at the minute 133 and see what the question was about the service.
Now, Bruce, you're asking if you've never used AI or ChatGPT, where would you start to try to learn it? My answer to you would be a really simple one. Go to chatgpt.com
Mhm.
and start typing. Ask it anything. I kid you not. In fact, you know what? Since we have a little bit of time, I'm going to do a little screen share and we're going to go to ChatGPT and just play with it for a few minutes because, quite frankly, I do find that the hands-on aspect of actually seeing AI leads to much better adoption. So,
Okay, hold on for a second. Alden asked the question referring to the 25 per month service. So that's the ChatGPT Teams. So you will just go to ChatGPT and
So
you'll get,
here I am in ChatGPT Teams.
there you go.
The Teams is this little diamond over here. I can add teammates. We can create our own customized stuff. The Teams one gives you a lot of extra features, and as long as you have 2 users or more at $25, it's much better than the Pro. Removes a lot of extra limitations and is really, really good. But in any case, even if you use the most basic one, you may not have as many of these extra options available to you. But here's the basics. You can drag in a document. Almost any text document can be dragged in. Here, for example, I am going to go to downloads and I am going to select a random, here's an offer sheet on a real estate transaction that happened a while back at random. Please summarize the terms of the attached. And it's going to read the Word document of the PDF and tell me all the basics that I might want. And whereas the original document may have been formatted in a way where copy pasting would be painful, here I can suddenly pull out information and drop it into a contract. But wait, there's more. Now that I have those terms, why not I drag in my template Microsoft Word contract document and say, now populate all of the relevant info into the attached contract template. You know what? I'm not even going to bother fixing it because the AI is smart enough where if you mistype it, it will figure it out. Then, while it's doing that, I'm going to drop in my template seller's writer because while it's working, I can, oh, wait a second. Oh, I dropped in a doc file and it can only work with docx. Oh, well, I'm not going to convert that file right now, but you get the point. Instead, I'll just do this writer. Please create a seller's writer based on the terms and the attached template. Now, while it's doing that, I'm just going to open up another tab and show you the various other things you could be doing. Like I saw a pigeon this morning that looked particularly happy. No idea what that means. However, I want you to draft me a short blog post about the importance of title searches and title insurance that pivots from that observation. Now, how many of you could do that if I gave you that as a creative writing assignment without it turning into something horribly painful? The happy pigeon and the hidden chain of title. I already feel like reading this thing. Now, let me just shrink this because it'll probably make the font bigger for all of you who have smaller screens than I do. But there it is. And I can I can edit that a little bit, drop it into LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever. And here's content that people might actually read because it's offbeat enough that it's clickbait basically. And it creates itself instantly without you having to pay anybody to do it.
So, Alex, a question. If you look at the question, there's a question, is it necessary to direct the AI product to shepherdize all cited cases, or is that part of its response otherwise? Can you put that question into the ChatGPT that you're using, and let's see what it answers?
Brilliant. Very often, yes, that's a very good point. Often you can ask the AI what its own limitations are.
Exactly. I use that quite frequently.
So it'll discuss shepherdizing, the default behavior. They do not shepherdize by default. They can summarize or locate, do not perform life citation validation or flag negative treatment unless specifically instructed and connected to a real-time legal research service. So that's important. So dedicated legal AI platforms, Westlaw, Lexis, Casetext may automatically do it, but to be honest, it doesn't hurt to add that extra sentence and tell it to. But back to the look at the document it could do, as you can see, the seller's rider has been successfully generated. Click here to download it. I click it, it downloaded. I guess now I have to share a different screen with you guys. But let's share the Microsoft Word screen. And voila, I have the rider with everybody's names populated, with everything done to conform to the terms that I previously provided. So what else can you do with generative AI? Quite literally anything. My 3-year-old started complaining about eating oatmeal. How can I make him want to eat it? And here are bits of advice that are comparable to what I would get out of a nutrition expert for children, with clear, simple instructions. And now it's offering to give me recipes and anything else I want. I am considering a spa vacation to Holland. Come up with a 5-day itinerary that takes me to their best spas, hotels, and restaurants, and starts with me landing on 8/2/25 in AMS. Those are ringing. So here's the itinerary, and if I want to take my spouse on vacation, here is where I should go. Here are the websites for the hotels. Here's what I should book at the spa. Here's where I should have dinner. Everything is accounted for. I can apparently order a private car to whatever, a UNESCO site, there's another spa, etc., etc. Now, I have used ChatGPT and Claude for any number of things. I have staff who have told me they use it for psychological therapy because talking to ChatGPT is better than any psychologist or psychiatrist they went to. They get faster results. And at no point, at least with the paid version, will you hear it say, I'm sorry, we're out of time. Let's pick this up again in 2 weeks. As you're sitting there going, but I'm in the middle of an emotional catharsis here. Can't I have another 20 minutes? So if you can think of it, ask ChatGPT, ask Claude. That's how you start using it. See what it does, see where it gives you good answers, see where it gives you bad ones. And you will very quickly figure out what it's good at and what you should not be asking it.
Alex, a second. I will share with myself an answer to a question that somebody asked about zoning. So somebody asked, what if you want to know all the sections of the ZR that are relevant? And I just copy pasted this. I didn't say what ZR is. And look at what the AI responded. AI to identify all relevant sections of the zoning regulations. Then you must explicitly instruct the AI to search the full ZR text, identify relevant sections, explain which section is relevant, provide citations. And so here, why this matters. This is the problems, how to phrase such instructions.
And by
So
the
as you
way,
can
that's,
see,
yeah, Gleb, that's probably the most important part of what you're showing there. If the user, if you guys out there are not sure about how to ask ChatGPT for something, talk to ChatGPT about it. Explain to it in the same way that you would explain to Gleb or to me that, hey, I want AI to help me with ABC. How do I get it to do that? So quite literally tell ChatGPT, I'd like your help with blah. I don't know how to ask you to create a really good work product, but the gist of what I need is this. Can you help me structure a prompt? And then work with ChatGPT on various iterations of the prompt. And as you read the prompt, think to yourself, does this ask for everything I want? Does this account for everything, all the parameters that I'd like ChatGPT to work with? And ask it to suggest additional parameters if you're not sure. You know, are there any additional instructions I can give you in, beyond what we're working on in this prompt to make the result more clear to a judge, to make the result more easy to understand for whatever reason, to make it focus more on blah, blah, blah. And again, ChatGPT will tell you, and then modify the prompt accordingly and play around with it, and eventually you will nail it.
Yep, absolutely. And here's another example of a question that somebody asked. So let's see. GID calculations such as rolling forward a new section of dates. And you could see, okay, here's the question, here's the answer, example prompt. Taking input in another language, and here's the prompt. And so here's the explanation. So basically, you can use generative AI to ask questions, and you can get those answers. Now, somebody asked about different models. So there are certain models that are available with generative AI. And ChatGPT as an example, just using ChatGPT and we're talking about it, this is great for most tasks to get very quick answers. If you want more complex questions, O3 is a better model. O3 takes about 2 minutes, 1 minute to 2 minutes to generate an answer, but it does deeper search and it gives generally more accurate answers for more complex questions. O4 and O4 mini are going to be between 4.0 and O3. This is good for writing and exploring ideas, but these are the basic models that you should be using. For most tasks, GPT-4o is good. For more complex ones, O3. For things in the middle, O4 and O4 mini high. The difference is that this will take maybe a couple of minutes to generate an answer, start generating an answer. This will take maybe about 30 seconds to a minute, 30 seconds to a minute. This will start generating an answer right away. The way it works is that the more time a model spends thinking before generating an answer, the more accurate of an answer it provides. But of course, that takes more time when you're generating an answer. Okay, other questions? So that one's answered.
I'm just going to bring up the second verification code for everybody.
Sure.
And the second MCLE verification code is the letter G. G as in generative. Again, the second MCLE verification code is G. Thank you.
So somebody asks, that they're saying they're using GPT-4o at chatgpt.com. Yes, it's a paid version. So it's definitely should be using a paid version at this stage. If one uses Teams, you can consider using Microsoft Copilot because it will integrate better. So if your firm is a Microsoft firm, I recommend using the Microsoft Copilot product. It uses OpenAI, so ChatGPT, but through Microsoft, and so it integrates better into other Microsoft tools. If your Google shop, so if all that you're using is Google, then you can use Google Gemini. It's also a quite good model. Now, somebody asked about how library works if you want to save deep research. Yeah, so what happens, let me share the screen in terms of library, and so you'll see how the library function works. So library here, so you should be seeing my screen. Library here is going to be for pictures. So that's only for picture library. So it has various pictures that I developed, and so you see various pictures. Here, there's going to be the main tool, ChatGPT, which you can choose which model to use. This you don't really need. It's going to be a video creator. These are various GPTs, which have certain, so this is, let's say, article writer assistant. This is a tool that has specific prompts built into it already. And so it has certain prompts that help me write an article quicker and more effectively. So I don't have to essentially take the time to copy paste my prompt into it. And that just saves me time for less clicking. Projects here are going to be various projects on that I talked about earlier, where you can compile specific chats into projects. So let's say I'm writing a book about generative AI. That's going to come out with Georgetown University Press, and this is various chats in that case. This is the Lasco case. This is a case where I'm an expert witness, and so this is going to be what the project is about, has a number of chats about this. Or this is another case that I'm working on where I'm expert witness. Then here, there's going to be chats from today, from yesterday, from previous 7 days, previous 30 days. You can see how extensively I'm using it. The main library tool is just researching it. So let's say Kansas City. So this is about this is my expert witness case. It's going to pull up all the cases where I talk about the Kansas City case that I'm working right now as an expert witness on. And anything else, you just put it into the chat and search, and that would bring up your previous topics, whatever you want. So this is the way the library works. And that will help you save your deep research and anything else. Okay, we have about 5 more minutes remaining. Any further questions?
All right, well, with 5 more minutes to go, is there anything else of AI usage that we can demo really quickly?
Let's see. Oh, I can show the deep research, just how people would use it. So I talked about the models here. So 4.0, 0.3, and so on. Now, there are also going to be certain functions, tools that you can use. One is the search tool. This tells generative AI that you definitely wanted to search the web. Sometimes it will search the web on its own. Sometimes you'll want, but if you definitely want to search the web, you'll turn it on. This is going to be upload files. So if you want, let's say, I talked about, let's say, this legal case that I'm working on, my expert witness report. If I wanted to reference the expert witness report that I'm working on, then I'm going to ask it to, I'm going to upload it, and then I'll say, summarize report, or something like that. But I'm not going to show it to you because obviously it's confidential, but just so that you understand what the process is. This is the upload tool. This is deep research. So deep research, that gives you a pretty deep, in-depth understanding of a report, whatever report you want to put out. Alex was mentioning that if you want to create images, this is good for all sorts of graphics that you want to be. If you're doing a presentation, super helpful to create graphics. This is Canvas. Oh, I mentioned before, you're using this if you want to edit some parts of a document and not the whole document. Let's see. So Lisa asks, where can I get your book? I'll send it to you if you indicated that you want to the resource from the presentation. Somebody asks, can ChatGPT create videos for your social media? Yes, so Sora would be a video creation tool. So Sora ChatGPT, that would be how you would use your creation tool. I don't have it set up because I don't do videos. Let's see. Somebody asks, I don't do any litigation. How valuable is AI for me? You're doing transactional attorney, doing general corporate real estate and estate planning and administration. Estate planning administration, all the paperwork that you want to create, generative AI tool is going to be great for that. Anything, general corporate usage, memorandums, interrogatories, anything. You're not doing in litigation, but let's say contract drafting, contract checking. If you want to replace a part, you want to check a contract, make sure that it has some components that are more valuable for your client and less valuable for the opposing, then you are going to be doing that. Generative AI is going to be super helpful for that. Let's see. So Bruce, I don't think we have time to set up a template for a cover letter, but we can talk about that.
Actually, let me disagree with you on that one. We still have 3 minutes. If you
All
don't
right.
think we can do a cover letter in 3 minutes, I think we can. Let me share a screen on that.
All right, let's do it. We'll finish up with that.
Yeah, somebody time me on this. So we're gonna start with sharing my oatmeal screen, and we're gonna do a whole rats, new chat. Okay. Prepare a cover letter for the attached contract to be sent from my office to buyer's counsel, asking for execution, 3 originals, and directing to contact us for wire instructions for deposit into escrow. And let me find a contract. Let's see, I know a contract I can use that quite literally needs one of those prepared right now. Yeah, the harder part is finding the example cases on, to drop in on a 0-second notice, but here's a contract that I am going to drop in. Here is the rider for the hell of it. And just in case, here is the deal sheet in case it has terms I don't care about typos. And had I wanted it to go on my letterhead, I would have actually also dropped in a document of my letterhead. But here you go. From me, date, via, to who. It pulled all the information that it needed from there. Contract, who, what, where. Please find the following. Kindly arrange execution. Send me that. Wire instructions, contract deposit. Here's the dollar amount. Promptly wired, blah, blah, blah. And there it is. All I have to do is highlight really from here down and drop it into my standard letterhead, print, and off it goes. What did that take? 2 minutes?
Yep, excellent. Exactly right. That's where it's important. So if you look, show the last line to people, that's where it's important to not copy paste that line. That's what I was mentioning.
Yes. Yes. Or the beginning line where here is the draft cover letter. Yes. Do not take the entire. In fact, be very careful with this copy button because if you do, it takes the entire thing. And then you end up with foolish looking things. Now, also, let's say you're not in love with this draft. You can switch models for something, have it do something else. You can also edit it in Canvas, where when you drop it in here, you can actually edit the output right here before it goes back into the AI, and you can say, here's the edits I wanted. Or you can just say, redraft this in a more formal tone with language only a lawyer would understand. So now here is the same letter. It was enclosed herewith. Please find the following duly executed transaction documents for the above captioned matter. You know, we can make it into a mouthful. It can be turned into all sorts of things. You know, upon receipt of fully executed documents and cleared escrow funds, the contract shall be deemed delivered pursuant to paragraph 17.2 hereof. You know, you can go as crazy as you want to with it. Now turn it into an informal email to which the docs will be attached. Opposing counsel is a friend. And now, hey, Mark, hope you're well. Attach this blah, send me this, ask for that. And it's friendly and easy and drafts itself. So, and again, it pulls all the relevant info, so you don't have to worry about getting anyone's email right or spelling their name right or anything like that. So in 5 minutes, we just went through, what, 3 or 4 versions of it? And I think the longest effort was me trying to remember where a contract and rider that I could use as a template might be hiding. On that note, I think we're out of time. So Gleb, thank you very much for the presentation. It was a pleasure to be part of it. A reminder for anybody who hasn't yet, if you follow that URL, you can sign up for resources from Gleb, and that way you'll get emails with sample prompts and other useful things you could use later. I am here as chair of NYSBA's Technology Committee. So for those of you looking for further resources from NYSBA, please don't hesitate to contact me. Please don't hesitate to visit NYSBA's website. We have tons of CLEs, and as hopefully you all know, under the new NYSBA pricing model, all of your CLEs are included. And so go through the library, look for things. I'm fairly sure you'll find at least a few of my previous CLEs where I do an entire hour with Claude.ai and show you how to do everything from having it compare 2 versions of a document to reviewing thousands of pages of discovery intake and so on and so forth. So there's lots of resources out there. Don't hesitate to reach out to either of us. We're always happy to answer any further questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Alex, and thank you as well to Dr. Topursky for all your experience and for doing this program today. This was great. So thank you both again for being here. And this does conclude the seminar. And I just want to remind attendees to please be sure to complete the course evaluation and return to your My Learning dashboard to enter in the verification codes for this program so you can download your CLE certificate. You can also print a copy of the verification form and submit it to registrar at nysba.org if you're not attesting through your dashboard. And thank you all so much for choosing New York State Bar Association CLE programs. Thank you again to our speakers. This was great. Thank you.
Bye all.